the scientific breakthrough, which Jubb cell rejuvenation really is about, revolutionary. But you could see in the hospital a spa more environment where detox could also be, and it could take 20 years off someone's life. But you could think about what this is, because it could fit into where Obamacare is in the hospital, and then you've got tourist and wellness sort of centres, which this radiant wet treatment, along with looking at different things that relate to cystic fibrosis, which for our listeners, it really, and readers, it's really about sticky mucus and clearing up sticky mucus, basically. And a mucusless diet, which what live food is, basically. But what are some distinctions that distinguish this from other things would be the cold processedness of a product, which has enzyme and is miraculous because it's left in its three-dimensional structure. And so improving microcirculation and these sorts of things, it's quite incredible and extraordinary, because someone must look at DNA and assist to help dissolve extraneous debris in the body. And these are things which, if somebody made an appointment or they got started where this program is, you'd be clearing away all of the immune complexes scientifically. And, you could save a lot of money by not having to do all sorts of tests and things, because there's so many variations of cystic fibrosis, which really is sticky, thickened mucus, and then passageways and things not being able to secrete proper nutrient, especially the pancreas and the brain and lung and places like this. But increasing microcirculation, everybody could see into a future moment longevity clocks, which could easily be applied where someone is and it estimates your age, like the glycan test. And so someone benefits pretty much immediately because they are clearing away what glycan would be there that could have caused someone's physiological age of an organ to have a far better holistic outcome and approach. So someone could come, of course, and just be listening and hear that there's hacks, various sort of health hacks that improve symptoms pretty much immediately. But if you get a longevity clock done, which is really like a health reading, it could be saved of a lot of tests and things. It's like that because it could be shown by having a look at so many blood tests and things like that in the past, and some 53,000 hours or more of work that's of clinical empirical work. And so one could see exact intervention that clears up silent inflammation. DNA structure really does predict what chronological age that one has, and the glycan test is an example of that, for instance, in this modern day. And but one could learn really all of the epigenetic meaning above what's genetic and what turns on and off DNA, which is sort of really what's called upstream cleaning, and that's what Jubb cell rejuvenation very much is about, upstream cleaning. So you're looking at healing and repairing DNA. And so in the process of that, where somebody opens up and clears up what's going on where digestion is, then lymph improves, and then that increases microcirculation. And so this work is really more about clearing up the life colloid terrain that you have and clearing away advanced glycolization of the end product, which is age, and improving metabolism, which really assists to cause somebody to reduce weight and have ability to be able to gain muscle better. And in the process, have far better cognitive processing. So somebody could come and get a health reading and things just like that, but you could look into a program. Anyway, Jubb cell rejuvenation really kind of pretty much often starts with a health reading, and one really isn't disappointed as a result of it. But you really get sixth generation product, which we might get the chance to talk just a bit about, which is cold processed nutrient and things, which for our readers and listeners, they can imagine what impact it has to be able to reduce the surface tension of the blood and to be able to make H3O2. Hexagonal lattice water, really, this six-sided water is what the type of water that we should have into our body. And it's really the water is, of course, more of health or disease than protein or fat or sugar or other things at all. But bringing cold processed enzyme in, and which is in the product, it really steps up the voltage that's in the blood. And so somebody really has a 1 volt more in their blood because they've got H3O2 negative and positive. And so the current flows between these two, but which on a micro level, you really echo-sterilizing that voltage does between 1 and 4 volts, echo-sterilizes spore and unwanted debris in the glycoplaking around cells. And so in the process of clearing away stone and flushing, doing flushes in the castor packs, people are starting to see that even just a small teaspoons here, there of castor oil improves Alzheimer's pretty much straight away. And the lemon bicarb shot also totally just helps so many things. It's incredible, which our work is a bit about. And so if somebody does a program, they could really clear away stone and improve pancreatic function. And they can improve the microcirculation as a result because they've really rid toxin from the body. And so you really get superconduction far more from Jubb product, white gold, and things like this, because you're really learning how water far more here is the key, and along with, of course, ridding rancid fat and indigestible protein. So stopping stone and reversing plaque buildup, it's really improving your metabolism and losing the unwanted and gained sort of weight that could have been, and improving far more your energy. And so one gains longevity as a result of this because you're really sort of developing a far greater fitness level, which is above and beyond what's regularly required of you during the day. And so somebody could start a program that's just like this and look into live food itself, which we could talk a bit about because it's really low phosphate, low methionine, and you learn a little more about what that is, which is just no flesh and no bean really, and a focus on the enzymes. But one turns the clock back, and it could see this. But if one minds the gut, they gut the mind, they're getting on board and upstream cleaning, and it really does rid arthritis and plaque and this sort of thing. And as a result of it, you're really seeing a lot more hemisynchronization between the hemispheres of the brain, and you're getting a lot more amplitude of energy in the body. And so one gains far more membrane permeability and surfactant enhancement by being more monophasic, meaning only really eating once a day. You might eat an ounce of something here, there a little bit, but basically you're really eating once a day because our body's really only designed in somatotyping for us basically to have eaten 1 meal a day. But otherwise then what you've done with doing this is you've halted all that DNA damage that would have been at the past, and you've turned the chronological clock back, and you're really selecting whole food vitamin mineral complexes, which is that's sort of really where the state of the art is. And so these distinctions really is really about reversing your biological age through this protocol. And some 53,000 hours more of research is really itself is really behind this. And this work has probably been the number one leader in more social influencing, where supposedly cold processed nutraceutical is today. Somebody could come in, of course, and they could get or download a free program and check out actually what the program is really a bit more about. And
is that on jubbdaily.com? the program?
Yeah, and I'm doing what I can to get that up better and things so that it services everyone better, and to be able to give product at a price which is really good for the pocket and things just like that. So I'm sort of really doing what I can to help where things are. But anyway, if we put all that aside, of course, you've got really could see that there's a lot of anchoring bias, isn't there? And a tremendous effect that has on somebody's brain. And we're talking about really the group think that you or anybody has around them, and what available heuristic sort of biases there could be. Like, for instance, it's much more likely that somebody could die from drinking too much water than it is, eating pot or something, for instance. And rather than dying of terrorists and that sort of thing, most people could be more likely to have died from some police accident or something, you see. But it's where we are. And it's a bandwagon effect where somebody is, and most people really are under some sort of groupthink. So it's just really that a glycosylated protein, like what goes on where your immunoglobulin G protein is, which can be measured from your saliva, it gets covered with the very things which are these glycans, and that could be read out. And so in the future, sort of clinics just like this, Jubb cell rejuvenation in the hospitals, I think, would look at your nitrous oxide and cortisol tests and methylation tests, and there will be various things that could be ordered, so somebody sort of has a much better history of things. And gastrin is a substance which in our work we learn more about and then secrete, and gastrin really produces hydrochloric acid, and that produces a nascent hydrogen, which is a hydrogen atom which has really got a lot more neutron and spare north negative within it. And where this molecule is present and it burns with oxygen, it causes anything that's an element to come to its resonance and to its boiling point individually. And so gastrin is produced where somebody's more in a monophasic, meaning only eating once a day relative. Otherwise, gastrin can't be quite like it should be. And hydrochloric acid in the upper stomach, that really does assist to cause nascent hydrogen to be there present so that it can break things down into its below the level of hydrogen itself. And that soup is something which goes toward being able to assist to help produce various things. So those things also are produced in the body, which we could come to perhaps at some point. But hydrogen and carbon really being spare is really what turns DNA on and off. And so gastrin produces nascent hydrogen, and just the topic of this, but glymph otherwise isn't flowing like it should be, and the functioning of one's brain and glymphatic all gets vamped up during sleep, and yet waste removal during that period of time and that sort of thing doesn't get a proper work properly because the hypercapnia causes carbon not to be present, which is a smooth muscle dilator, opens everything up. And so that's part of the reason why somebody should be really breathing through their nose. And so waste removal during sleep and this sort of a thing goes on for someone's brain. Otherwise, norepinephrine from sleeping pills and things like that as drugs causes a non-ecological inhibition of non-REM sleep. So it blocks and stops that from it says that you don't really have proper non-REM sleep. So it sort of causes people to wake up after some 4 hours or more and changes the way that they are balanced. But in our work, we talk about how red as a colour balances blue, and a red and blue balance where things are for where light is, and dynorphine, which are opioids and kappa opioids and receptors all are assisted, which of course would be to feel good, and the regulation of the amygdala, which is connected to the brainstem and is involved more in internal processedness, more so. It becomes neurologically inhibited a little more, so someone has access more to be receptive of the outside world. And you've got various areas of your brain which are functional, like the septum pellucidum, which we could talk a bit about in a moment, which connects the brain, both hemispheres together more, and a sensation between the hemispheres of the very finest substances like what we're talking about here. But life food, where we learn about what this is, it assists your body to produce natural pentapeptide and enkephalins, and also anandamide, which are really fine substances, but these are the things that cause you to feel good. And they get released and be drawn into the red blood corpuscle, and then released from the red blood corpuscle into the body where neededness is. And so you've got postsynaptic, meaning past the point of some synapse, as a neuron that is functional, where substances get released into the extracellular space and this sort of thing. And so you've got PABA and GABA and these molecules as neurotransmitters in the body. And life food really targets, through Jubb rejuvenation, your capacity to really have a really great amount of B7 and B9 and these sorts of things, because this is very important to be able to make anandamide and things just like this, where that's produced in the intestine, these compounds and things. Otherwise, of course, radiant wet and these sorts of things cause somebody to really be able to cleanse and have aero-life colloid, which is molecules of nutrient which comes through more your respiration and things. But people could have heard of ashwagandha and how various herbs have a great expression, have a more sort of GABA, for instance, where chronic stress could have depleted GABA as a dopamine function. It sort of really increased this various sort of herbal formulas, which we've got L309, and 309 aids lipid metabolism for mesentery organs, which are the organs which supply the pancreas and the gallbladder and the liver and the duodenum with proper functioning. And so without that, otherwise, a prostaglandin is existing, which you're supposed to have. And that's an important component of mucin. And also it increases the various nutrients, like what's in your brain. Glycine is an amino acid, and 309. All of these give a greater capacity for non-REM sleep. And providing you've got proper life colloid in the intestine, pyridoxine, which is the protein vitamin, is present there. But if a lot of cooked food was, then it always is robbing pyridoxine a lot from the body. But the parts of hydrogen start to become even more increased, where pineal gland function is, and this protects the body by inhibiting sort of too much gastric acid and being able to reduce that as an antacid function. Otherwise, you could see that a caustic effect occurs past that point when secretin, which is supposed to be secreted by lower down the pineal gland, doesn't neutralize gastrin and cholecystokinin, which is really responsive to fat, where things are, all of this engages the very functioning and the health of glycopacking that's around a cell. And light conduction is really important. Most people can have not thought about this, but red really stimulates more dopamine, and blue and white light does, and can cause excessive amounts of that. and bleaching out of the eyes and things because of the blue and white light. And light doesn't come through the eyes as much to be able to make a direct current. And then all sorts of lenses that don't let UVB or UVA through also can impact someone's actual energy in their body, because we make energy more like from gamma and radio wave frequencies and things, and convert that into direct current. And so no input is needed to produce energy like that, which is what our body does. And so if somebody eats live food, they don't have somatostatin being released. But if somebody's eating dead food and they eat complex carbohydrates and heavy protein with that, it always raises somatostatin, and somatostatin inhibits prostaglandin synthesis. Prostaglandin is like the substance is released from a prostate or from a Skinner gland for her, same gland basically. And so these are all compounds which have an effect, and the exocrine, meaning outside the cell secretions, and you've got bicarbonate channels, which is so important, which and chloride channels, which slowly become not so functional like they should, and how viscoelastic what the gel is, and acting lubricant, which stimulates aggregation, fusion, and differentiation of red blood corpuscle, which has its own totipotency to be able to come anything that's needed by the body. In colloidal biology and secrets of an alkaline body, somebody could really learn a little bit more about this area. But aggregation, fusion, and differentiation of spore into endothelial and epithelial cell, also pleomorphing into fibroblast, and things just like this goes on, which various hormone that is produced naturally, that you've got proper life colloid terrain inside, prolactin and parasort hormones really is secreted by the Brunner glands more, and you have proper Brunner gland activity. But if you've got stone formation in the pancreas from excessive phosphate and excessive methionine, that all assists cause aggregates of calcium and sodium to be extraneous and thickens the mucus. And so rather than having proper prostaglandin function and things like that, and improving the microcirculation, you've got a proper hygienic body as a result. And the product that we make more, it's got tiny little platforms, one called sphingosinoceramide, which cause this to be transported through the membrane of the body. So you've really got self-expression and individuality. And you have molecules that be able to cause this to be. Secretin is a hormonal neurotransmitter which neuromodulates and causes a connection with the brain and the gut. And the Brunner gland, all freed up from Jubb cell rejuvenation, really assist to cause immunoglobulins to be, where enzymes are able to clear away extraneous debris in the body. And so the septal pellicum that's in your brain can sense the pleasure sense of integration that's existing. It's a very thin double-layered membrane that's in between the two large ventricles of the brain. It links to the fornix and flow of the structure, in a syntax of your vestibular sense, which is your whole body movement, like in, out, up, down, on, off. And the way that our sensory motor complex is in balance is the vestibular sense, in the way that this is being used in whole brain patterning. So you're moving forward and toward and things like this, which causes you to be more associated and things more in life versus sort of dissociated in life and not so tuned into anything much. And so that's radical because you've really got a great relaxation, which you can see, and a triangular, translucent wall there is in this septum pellicum, which it really is our sense of our aesthetic sensation. It really engages you in reward experience and social bonding and integration with verbal and non-verbal memory, learning and behaviour is. And secretin downstairs there, like we're talking about in the Brunner gland, gives you lipid signalling to be able to do such. You've got to have eicosanoid sort of 20 carbon sort of molecules produced locally. This is really necessary and also you have to have bicarbonate channels to function. And when people have done over acid or dead food, all of these things start to not function as well as what they can. But imagine it all turned around like what we're talking about by doing a 42-day nutritional cleanse. And even the heart, which beats frictionless really in its own sac, slips in the myocardium, and gastrin and secretin really allow such because you've really got to have slipperiness and got to have hydrogen down and carbon down, right down to the atoms of it. And nerves, pain and all of those sorts of things is really gut connected and gut to the brain upstairs more. And so how somebody feels in the trunk, like after you eat, could you escape if a bear chased you or something? If whole brain functioning really is vestibular, and it's a meta modality really to apply that cause more you to be more in equilibrium in the way that you're using your sensory motor complex. And the septum pellicum, which has existed there, which we're talking about, really is this, including a sort of a space that's filled with fluid, and the equilibrium that it's sensing between your inner hemispheres. And the hemisphere synchronization is occurring, so information is flowing across the corpus callosum from one hemisphere to the other. And so you've got a cavity resonance there which communicates this, which is for superposition, which is broadcasting its effect ever more. And it contains element which is very fine filtrate, like we're talking about, including endorphins, opiates, enkephalins, anandamide, dynorphine molecules, which really engage you and I where interest and pleasure is being felt. And so hydrochloric acid really is modest to be just what should be and not overdone because somebody's been stressed out. And so how relaxed the shoulders are, more in the tummy and these sorts of things. Pleasure and interest really trigger more whole brain functioning. It's sort of coming to cause proper prostaglandin and pain sensation and fever. I mean, these sorts of things. And so there's a proper neurological inhibition of the amygdala and tegmentum where it mediates an aversive state and inhibits that. And so you can only feel pleasant and happy, but you can't feel really miffed at the same time, for instance, because one state neurologically inhibits the other. So septal neural connecting connects the muscle to the brain, and acetylcholine really is a major neurotransmitter in the septal region, and it's connecting all the hemispheres together ever more, and the boundaries that would have been outside awareness comes to be more so. Somebody isn't just only inside themselves, but having a lot more transpersonal perception. And motor sequencing between right and left side is more balanced in a sense of state. Otherwise, there's more left triggered sorts of body movements as acting axis and axis in cue. And you can look and see through body movements and these sorts of things, which somebody could learn how to do and be able to determine to what degree somebody's more in whole brain functioning. And so nerve transmission and what you're doing where you're doing Jubb rejuvenation is really improving your bicarbonate transport, which improves all this neurotransmitters, your gut, the mind the gut, and secretin downstairs there where the Brunner gland is secreted. And you've got proper then liver and pancreatic function as a result. And now small molecules can be produced like these dinorphine and opiates and things, which naturally are needed for proper immunity, because you can imagine that people are getting by just on a thread and the smell of an oily rag, perhaps. And that energy should be being made just direct without any input needed, which it does. I mean, up to a certain point, that slowly sometimes would, over time, become more coagulated itself, so it doesn't really function like it should. And so immune function does require proper dynorphine release and response, and a person's a feeling of, wow, I feel like I'm achieving things. And you've got an exercise sort of resistance sorts of training that goes on where you're building your muscle. And so you're clearing away all immunoglobulins, which would have been excessive, and you're raising the level of the hygiene of your blood. And this is what you're doing on Jubb cell rejuvenation. And that requires somebody to really be considered more of lifestyle changes. And now you can change the base of glycan and these things, which definitely could be shown, in like an immunoglobulin G test that someone did. But certain it is, you could look at somebody's face and you could see how much more they have improved. But we started to talk just a bit about hydrogen of 3 atoms and 2 oxygen atoms, which is a water, which is really a gel, and N-acetylneuraminic acid, which is vitamin L or life hydrate, which is a product that we have to produce and to make HCO2. It assists to cause immunoglobulins to get cleared away, and you're much more benefiting on a live food mucus-less diet. So drinking 4 ounces 3 or 4 times over 3 hours before you go to bed can help clear up all the bladder conditions that somebody could have had and cause them to be able to sleep even more through the night. Otherwise, advanced glycolization endpoint could have been drastically not reduced, which it is on a live food monophasic program. So where somebody would have eaten complex carbohydrates and heavy protein, it always would have caused somatostatin to be released. And when somebody listens into the work that we do more about cystic fibrosis, you can see that so many variants of this occur that most every condition has something that's cystic fibrotic more or less underneath itself. And how incredible purslane is, in assisting to help prostaglandin and things like this. And it's got great levels of B7 and B9, and can make vitamin L, life hydrate, which is N-acetylneuraminic acid, and white gold, which is typically found along with this. All of these things are very, very cell protective. And so in a cleanse, basically, somebody's just not doing any flesh, they're not doing really any cooked food, or if they're preparing things, they're preparing it in a way that keeps some goodness to things. You're not doing any breakfast, you're not doing any solid food, so you could do solid food, but you could really chew it down to drink it, and basically there's no bean. So there's 5 things which you avoid relative, and somebody could learn really the value of far infrared and how incredible that is in causing ever more greater effect of everything. And of course the castor packs and castor oil and these things are quite extraordinary. Blue and white light exposure is reduced at night. That's so very important. And otherwise, white and blue light could have really destroyed proper brain circuitry and these sorts of things. Most people have not really talked too much about that sort of thing, but that you're going to see this sort of stuff sort of coming up more in a future moment where, these screens or could have had an effect on people's eyesight and that. But dopamine is produced via far infrared balance with blue. And if dopamine was low via destructive white and blue light upon the eyes, one could have not been able to act upon truth even if they had heard it, because neurotransmitters, which is really important to be able to have any issue of reality in a sense of this being inside. You can imagine a black box, lenticular energy, which sort of comes in and doesn't come out because it curves as it comes into your eyes. And black light, if you use a black light, shining this on the eyes, it shows a fluorescence back to you. And so you can see that the eye is made up out of a whole range of things like rhodium, osmium, ruthenium, palladium, and these incredible monatomic element and things, and how ultraviolet light and radiant far infrared is absorbed by the body, and especially the eyes. And the eyes are bonded and made with aromatic, meaning fragrant benzene rings, and which are little circuits. And on a JC quanta, which is a Jubb constant, which is the smallest pixelated dot, you've really got a controlled inductive resonance where light is induced, to sound, and H3O2 negative to positive is produced, and a current comes from this. And so Ricky?
Oh, really sorry about that. We're still
Oh, yeah. When did we? I don't know. When we just got cut off. I'm not sure. Oh, red light causes all of this to get turned more back on again. Blue balanced more by red. UVA turns like otherwise hormone production and these sorts of things off. Blue light causes respiration proteins to be more stretched apart ever more. And while whole food vitamin complexes, you've got dehydroxyacetone, and you've got melanopsin hormone, which, keep in mind, it sort of really runs the central nerve pathway via a direct current, which is produced from your eyes. And you've got a far infrared science, which assists, of course, live food. Like if you ate purslane, for instance, or you had a little bit of a handful of arugula and these sort of things, you're able to make these beautiful molecules called like docosahexaenoic sort of acid, for instance, or hecosampantanoic acid. So these molecules, specific molecules, they are very much more needed for light transmission and how protein really interacts with north negative base. And so light, which is magnetically conducted through the body, you've got calcium and fluorine and chloride molecules, which in the eye combine with those nutrients, monatomic element, cause a fluorescence and things. So could somebody explain what the reason is behind those fluorescent elements being at the back of the retina there and converting everything of energy into a mechanical energy, which makes adenosine triphosphate, which, of course, the vitreous solution of the eye doesn't have any blood vessels in it and is running absolute from the energy that we're talking about. Light binds everything together in a particle which is conducted by a JC quantum, which is down there on a level of minus 71 millivolts. And a pressure down there is upon carbon and various molecules. And melatonin absorbs light, rhodium that's in Jubb's white gold and all the product gives you this great fluorescence and causes you to feel more warmed up, and emitting of infrared radiation yourself. And it's immediate that these things happen. Carotenoids, which are these red pigments and things, and phycocyanin, which are blue, all balance and all exist where light is harvested, and aromatic ring compound, and these are molecules which are perfectly been selected where product is to be cold processed, and which is what's on a Jubb cell rejuvenation cleanse. And each product is something which is a whole food environmental complex that allows these things which we're just talking about. And so a magnetophoresis exists to convert carbon into oxygen, basically. And cobalamin, when this is all exposed to light, you see. So it causes water to be more made, and rhodium-based catalyzed cathodes sort of cause carbon dioxide to really become oxygen, carbon monoxide. And you've got life colloidal transmutation going on. So you've got these wavelengths that is visible to us, like 400 to 420 nanometer, which is violet, and then you could see much larger packets up to 620, 780 nanometer size, sort of red light wavelength that's visible to us, and some could see way down to 130 nanometer and way up to at least 1100 nanometer with their eyes. So there's a bit of a variation. Some people have tetragenic, meaning 4 colors, and most of us have trigenic, basically only 3 colors in our eyes. Dopaminergic amacrine cells get ring molecules to function, and these molecules really are there in your eyes. And so, things that you see stimulate dopamine and this sort of thing. And so where somebody's sort of relaxed and they have lambda and epsilon wave, they're more in an iOS state, things are more flatlined relative inside, and beta and gamma wave more is present. And so one has a much greater capacity for light absorption, and molar absorptivity sort of is increased, which is a measure of how the wave light is absorbed. And so, you've got molecules and wavelengths, which is very specific. So 260 nanometer is 1/2 of a strand of DNA, for instance, and resonance relates to molten molecule. And on a nanometer level, you've got 1/1000th of an inch, that is. It's 1/1000th of a micrometer, 1/millionth of a meter is a nanometer. So it's down there where you've got this rest and recharging up, and a spectral analysis that one could use where you could look down and see a dimension of reality, which is just gorgeous, where exceptional brain function is. You've got a state connection of a remain relaxed, steady state flow where internal dialogue is zipped and set aside. And you've got neuromelon and dopamine, and you've got neuron generation versus degeneration. And so I looked under somatoscope to see many things and to see how aggregation, fusion, and differentiation happened, and how a red blood corpuscle could become an immune cell and things like this, or a fat cell could reverse differentiate back into a red blood cell, which is things somebody could learn a little bit more about, in colloidal biology and the sequence of an alkaline body. But if you could imagine that life is really a confluent of vibration at 7.8 hertz, and you have a Schumann resonance, which is a vertical field which goes up from the Earth sort of some 35 miles, and sort of really got power surges within this a bit. And within this, you've got an energy endowed more with eye awareness. It's like a plasma of a fourth dimensional condition, and 4D printing. And so a Schumann resonance assists to cause this, and a 7.8 resonance. And you've got various sorts of resonances which sort of sets limits and things, where a JC quanta is. A JC quanta is really 10 zillionth of smaller than a light meter, as far as light's gone in a meter. So it's 10 zillionth faster than this. So stellar neuron have molecule which rotate, which is engaged where memory is, 78%, which is needed to be able to get a message to pass on. And so you could be allowing of 22% to be against something, and it still can get passed on. And messages are sensed by your hippocampus, which has got a steady state flow and a readout. And so post-temporal sort of hemisynchronization that goes on where naturalness is, where pleasantry is, large-scale sort of distant neuron all become ever more constant through superposition. And in an eye where you've got a lot more gamma wave and epsilon and lambda, or which, as one could learn more about this, you've really got greater hemisynchronization. And so 432 hertz really resonance is ever more a perfected sort of resonance, like where energy is repeated, and it does so without any resistance. And you've got an intense euphoric happiness, and the pineal resonance, which is switching internal dialogue off. That's the way that you could do this the best, and it's useful in discovering how active one is being more in the moment. Some eyes actually really, like we were talking about just before, are tetragenic, and others sort of mostly trigenic. But all distraction is stopped evermore by whole brain patterning and eye awareness, and sleep, where things are otherwise sort of where headaches would have been, they all get disappeared evermore on life with nutrition, and eye awareness evermore practice, where don't, want, can't, should, try, but must only is sort of used more positively versus it only ever could have engaged something that wasn't positive. And so the brain naturally in an alpha rhythm evermore sort of is a gating reflex, and you've got greater information that can flow from one hemisphere to the other across the corpus callosum, which is a bundle of connective tissue connecting your hemispheres together. And so your retinal circuits of your eyes, and the source of that retinal element engages dopamine, which is, that's a neurotransmitter, and the carriers of that come from rods, which are sort of information as resonance is sped up in the rod, and it acts as a regulated voltage channel, altering magnochemical sort of transformation which is going on in the brain. And without that, you're not really making GABA and PABA and these sorts of things, and glycine molecules and everything. And so, you could really think that aggregation, fusion, and differentiation of red blood corpuscles would be able to make various things like dopamine. And everything impacts an effective movement and a reward system that we have. And you can imagine sort of how important it is, in fact, that you've got proper light spectrum. And so what's the benefit of having full spectrum light versus you don't really have that? Or what's the benefit of actually having more warm colours at night versus, no, you really don't have that. And so just like fragrance really engages in a non-polar molecule, and the body has to have these non-polar molecule to function, and cooking and things destroys those molecules, as to be the reason why food itself is far better. But olfaction, in the sense of smell and things like this, really, it's engaging in more, enliven more where your nervous system is, and the vestibular sense, which we started to talk a bit about, which is your on, off, up, down, and any word which relates to whole body movement, is more sort of sense put in terms of the flow. And fragrance is really like a strong influence, evoking sort of quick, more polarized response where things are. And out of consciousness, somebody could be accessing states through more olfaction, through lengthening inspiration through your nose in a short moment, and that sort of is accessing some recalled experience of a state and acting as a switching mechanism, really. But your septal pelliccidum and the clarity that goes on where this is allows you to be able to pick a pattern out from a stereogram. And so children and somebody whose brain is functioning more plastic, their septal pelliccidum is functional, and interest and pleasure is really what's more motivational. It's what sort of causes you to participate in something day in and day out, basically. I think when we come back just in a moment here, we should talk a bit about eye awareness. A little bit. And what sort of neurotransmitters and things like that as engage more in eye awareness. And how does the septal pelliccidum is our sense of alliesthetic healing and feelings of bliss, and how does this engage ever more and more in your science of longevity? Yes?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, mate. I'll give you a call back in just a bit, and we'll finish this session up here. But life food, life colloid, and life itself has a confluent vibration of 7.8 hertz, and that's that Schumann frequency. And so within everything that you feel or anyone else does, you've got this 432 hertz, which is resonance, and you've really got an intense, ever more euphoric sort of happiness ever felt. And it's sort of more pineal gland resonance here. So anyway, all right. So when we come back, we're going to talk just a bit more about this, mate. I'll call you back in about 5 minutes. Love you, mate.
Thank you.
Okay, mate.